Not well. Not very well.
Get closer.
Not very well? Can you hear me now? How many people can't hear me now? Huh?
Talk right into it.
Talk right into it? I'll put it like this. How's that?
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
And I think Alice is about the same height, okay, as I am. So, anyway, welcome. I'm Elizabeth Weber, the director of the Kellogg Writer Series. And before I forget, I want you to take your cell phones out and either turn them off or silence them. And I ask that you please not text during the reading. Before I introduce Kaylee Jordan, who will introduce tonight's reader, poet Alice Friman, I want to take a few moments to thank some people. I want to thank events scheduling staff, Christy Beckman and Jenny Randall, bookstore manager Kim Million and her staff who are outside the hall selling books, and all the English department faculty, particularly Department Chair Dr. Kyoko Amano, and also Department Administrative Assistant Debbie McGarry, who I don't know what I'd do without Debbie McGarry, truly. Okay? And last but not least, I want to thank the members of the Lit Arts Programming class, who are back right there, raise your hands right there, who helped with the advertising, room arrangements, and if I didn't have their help, this series would not be successful. They really helped me. You can find out about our readers. Actually, this is the end of our reading series for this year. This is our final one. But you can find out about next year's through our UIndy Arts calendar and also the English department websites. We also do have a Facebook page under Kellogg Writer Series. If you want to know, you can find out from that. Alice Friman's books are available outside the hall. There will be a brief question and answer series after the reading and also a book signing. And now I'm going to welcome Kaylee Jordan up to give the real introduction. Okay, Kaylee.
All right, I'm Kaylee Jordan. Can you hear me? Good. From the back? Okay. I'm here to introduce to you a really great human being who I had the pleasure of meeting yesterday in my poetry workshop class and had dinner with today. Also, I got a lot of this information off the internet, so I'm sure she can tell you a lot more in the question and answer. She was born October 20th, 1933 in New York City, graduated from Brooklyn College in 1954 and got her master's from Butler University in 1971. She got her honorary doctorate from UIndy in 2002. When Friman was married, she moved from New York City in the 1950s with her husband to Dayton, Ohio, and then 4 years later to Indianapolis. She later traveled to other countries seeking out a more diverse experience, unlike the homogenous Midwest here. She didn't start writing poetry seriously until she was in her 40s, which jokingly she told us yesterday in poetry that divorce gives you plenty of things to write about. She also said that things get better as you get older because your experiences build. She was also one of the founders of the Indiana Writers Center and taught English and creative writing here from 1971 to 1993 and has been, I'm going to probably say this wrong, Professor Emerita of English and creative writing since 1993, which I'm sure a lot of students don't know what that is because I didn't. And it is a retired professor honored by her university for distinguished contributions to academia, and not all retired professors get this award. Unsurprisingly, she also received the Teacher of the Year award here in 1993. She didn't only teach at UIndy though, she also taught at Randolph College, Ball State University, Indiana State University, IUPUI, and Curtin University in Perth, Australia. She did a lot more moving than I ever have because in 2003 she moved to Milledgeville, Georgia, where she currently resides as poet in residence in the MFA program at Georgia College and State University. Her sixth full-length collection of poetry is The View from Saturn LSU. Her previous book is Vinculum, for which she won the 2012 Georgia Author of the Year Award in Poetry. She is a recipient of the 2012 Pushcart Prize and is included in Best American Poetry 2009. Other books include The Book of the Rotten Daughter and Zoo, which won the Sheila Margaret Moughton Prize from the New England Poetry Club and the Ezra Pound Poetry Award from Truman State University. Her work appears in the Georgia Review, Shenandoah Boulevard, the Southern Review, and many others. It has been said that Alice Friman's poetry firmly inhabits the Land of the Living, Subway Station's episodes of Judge Judy, and the experience of living with depression. In her work, you will see that images of the comic and tragic live side by side, sharpening each other by contrast. So please welcome Alice.
The river. I stood in my grandmother's kitchen, watching my mother roll her mother's hair. She wanted a permanent. The hair a white mist, nothing more. The rollers pink. Her scalp pink too, but different. I was 12. I thought no one could be so old and trembly and pink. I thought a lot when I was 12. I thought nobody thought the way I thought, to be so old and still want. What could be left for her to want? Her face a crosshatch of lines, the head, the hands, the terrible shaking. Little ghost, if you could speak, you whose eyes look at me now, tell me my charge. You are 62 years gone, surely nothing but splinters left. What do you order me to write, other than what I know? That nothing is as cruel or sweeter than the shortness of our days. That flesh clings, refusing to be destroyed even as it is. That yes, there were 3 of us, and after, to celebrate your curls, we had tea in the yellow cups and the best Russian coffee cake in the world, your favorite, with eddies of walnuts and cinnamon roiling through dark like a river. I am going to read from this strange new book. And whether or not you buy it, that would be very nice, of course, but I would like you to take a look at the cover as you leave. It's called The View from Saturn. It's a NASA photograph. And over the W, there's this teeny tiny dot. That's us. We are nothing. Nothing. So the book begins with poems from The View from Saturn. That is, from looking at us objectively. And then at the same time, because after all, if we are nothing, then what on earth is all of this fuss about? All of this misery about? Then each poem, each section begins with a poem about the body. Okay? So the book looks at us objectively and then very, very closely. Okay? night I saw Saturn. Crossing the Pacific, flying backwards into perpetual night, and all night one light on in the plain, a young man beneath scribbling. I am looking out the window, the glass prism that shatters the stars. And we at 30,000 feet, not flying up, but seemingly across, and headed straight toward it, Orpheus of the night sky, the rock that sings. What is he writing? That man who can't sleep, so doesn't even try, stuck in the intersection, unable to indulge in a window reverie, leaning his head, as I do, against the glass. The night I saw Saturn was because I pleaded, before I die, I want to see, and the astronomer complied, there on the top of Mauna Kea, and me shivering in all the clothes I had, and hanging on because I couldn't see my feet, so dark it was, as I set my eye to the metal eyepiece. Then true to the pictures in my school books, or the planetarium's mock-up, only luminous, radiating more energy into space than received from the sun. Oh, Saturn, grandfather of love, what do scientists know of the light that lights the pearl? Beauty's absolute, cold white and burning in the sky. And now, this man, the only light in the plain, ringed by huddles of sleepers, as if he were guardian of the oblivious, awake for us all. How furiously he bends to his work. How lovely the light lingering on the shock of his hair holds him, incandescent, reflecting in rings. How it is. Late October, and the pitiless drift begins in earnest. And all that whispered in the pockets of summer's green uniform is shaken out and dumped. My mimosa knew, for wasn't that death fingering the leaves all summer? Yet the tree plumped its pods, spending all July squeezing them out, going about its business, as did the slash pine and loblolly, spraying pollen, coating windows, cars, filling every idle slit with sperm. What does life mean but itself? Ask the sea. You'll get a wet slap backhanded across your mouth. Ask the tiger. I dare you. And your life, with its tedium of suffering, what does it mean but what it is? And mine, balancing checkbooks and whomping up a mess of victuals, as my son used to say. My son, the funny one, the always hungry for supper, and the happy ending I was never able to give him one. Who am I to write the user's manual for a life, except to say, look at trees, dug in and defiant. Be like the river, stick out your tongue. Why not? What's to lose when what's to lose is everything? You ever notice that, especially up here in the north, in September the sky gets bluer? So this is called bluer than blue. And I guess it's bluer than blue. Scientists say cosmic dust is the cause, or vapor, wavelengths, or Lord Rayleigh's law of scattering. But I say, The reason the sky turns bluer in September, pouring down a rush over every roof and tree, is Earth herself, our own girl, gussied up in her best blue atmosphere for her autumnal tango with a star. Lie still, spine flat to the ground. Turn off the radio in your head. Hold your breath and hush. You can almost feel her tipping back in a rolling ecstasy of air. Chiffon sheer as Salome's blue tease. So deep, you're sure you could fall up and into it the way you would a couch of 3 wishes. Every want you ever wanted found in those loosening wrappings of her pleasure. Oh, that such bluer than blue were enough to forget the leaves droop and softening, now that we are in the vortex, the winding down of the clock. Better to imitate the twirling earth, flaring out her silks while the spider spins her last, each day squeezing shorter from both ends. What else is to do but dance? The way leaves will come November, the way my sweet young thing, the only one who ever loved me, whirls me each night in his arms. Well, some of you might recognize my sweet young thing. I am so many years older than my sweet young thing, it's embarrassing. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just imagine how much older I should be than him, and then double it. But my sweet young thing is getting older, and he doesn't have that lovely auburn hair that some of you might remember. It's all gray now. And I say, what happened to my sweet young thing? Anyway, I'm going to read 3 of the body poems that then introduce each section. So we're focusing down to the body. The brain. The brain always knows where you are. A triumvirate of eyes, ear canals, tiny nerves in the joints, phones in regularly. I'm biting my cuticles over and out, practicing the tuba, or guess what I'm doing in bed with all this flesh? The brain knows. That's why you can pass the neurologist's test. Clap hands in the dark, they'll find each other. Using 20% of the body's blood supply, 1 billion gray cells should be good for something. Discovering a cure, unearthing the great gray owl of wisdom, rereading Aristotle's Ethics, remembering where I left my keys. Something other than smug in their airy this Tuesday afternoon being clever when I'm standing at the window watching the hawk's persistent shadow circling. I went in Philadelphia, I went to see the Body Show. Do any of you know what I'm talking about? I don't know if it's come here to Indianapolis, but I went to the big one, and it was fun. It's just incredible. And I took notes, so a lot of this information is where, that's where I got a lot of this information. The hands. Okay, and this one has an epigraph. After conception, everyone spends 1/2 hour as a single cell. Imagine, smaller than a decimal point and already ready for long division. Each hand wanting its own arithmetic to get as far from the other as possible. The left's penchant for roses, the right for the fork. Yet how often they search each other out to ring in despondency, clap in awe, make mirror images to cradle a beloved's face. How like brothers smacking each other around, or sisters picking at each defect. Only at night are they still, the body balling up to be one again, each part coming home limp to center. See how the old in their chairs stare into their laps, each gnarled papery hand holding tight to the other, the way they did that first day in kindergarten, knowing something big was about to happen. This one is called The Tongue. I hope you enjoy it. The epigraph is also from the Body Show. The epigraph is, taste buds are replenished, I bet you didn't know this. Taste buds are replenished every 2 weeks. Each one knowing how to inform the brain what the mouth takes in and what enzymes are needed. Every morning, after I brush, I stick out my tongue to admire my buds. Those wise, discerning little clones plugged into the brain by who knows what voodoo rite of chemistry. Baby gourmets born already appreciating the delight of fried sweet potatoes with a perfect cheeseburger. Having only 2 weeks to live, there's scarce room for insult. Impatient in the clutch of a wet happiness, wee nestlings open wide for the savor and smack of good food, the last thing you want before you can't want anymore. Grandma, 99 and blind, still relished a bit of onion on her plate when all she could manage for dinner was a dollop of mashed salmon and 3 green beans. Let those of us in poetry's holy orders speak not in tongues, but of tongues. That nursery of bumps, nodes, nubbins, pimplets of pleasure, buds so small one needs a microscope, but cheek to cheek, petal to petal, weave a flowering, a red carpet for good bread, oranges, morning coffee, French toast with almonds, my sweet love's watering mouth. Okay, the middle of the book, in the very exact center, the spine of the book, is a very long poem called The Joker. The trickster, fate, destiny, God. And the rest of the book flares out from that middle. Okay? What I'm using in the poem is a deck of cards. How many of you, well, I used to do this when I was a kid, make a house of cards out of cards? Any of you raise your hand? Let me see. Oh, good. There are 3 characters in this poem. It's a long poem. One of them is my great aunt Sadie. And my great aunt Sadie was a little, and she was my grandfather's sister, and he hated her because she was a little and as ugly as sin. She was. She had buck teeth. You don't see that anymore, like that. And her hair looked as if she stuck her toe in an electric socket. She used to tell fortunes with cards. The other character is Irene Devere. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. A very wealthy woman from Paris. You can go to the museum and see what happened to her. She was married to a very wealthy person who loved his porcelain collection. And she ran off with a race car driver. Okay, so there are my three characters. Okay. Oh, the Joker. A house of cards has no window, no kitchen, no tarts. The queen with all her hearts holds no more sway than a 4. The king, equal to a deuce, or that knave, the town crier with a bell, announcing a royal beheading. This is the house of the Joker, trickster of the dark carnival, scepter of misrule, dictator, dedicated to the chop. This is the house of whimsy, a balancing act, built to fall. I shuffle the cards. Time for my nightly game of solitaire. That pasteboard horse I've ridden for 50 years. The deck sticky with constancy. A dog barks, a clock ticks, black 5 on a red 6, red 7 on the black 8. Wait, the aces are loading, but the one-eyed jack who waxes his golden hair will not turn up. The queen of clubs drops a flower on my grave. She is my mother. The king holds a sword to his side, threatens to use it. Relegated to the box, the Joker, reader of fortunes, smirks. Great Aunt Sadie, too, told fortunes. Visited once a year at night to hawk her policies. Peed with the bathroom door open. Bloomers hanging a bunting between her knees. Grandpa's sister, Grandpa's shame. Bucktooth Sadie, old as the old country, skin like boiled chicken, gray hair wild around her head as if she stuck her toe in an electric socket. Mama rolls her eyes. Bedtime. Oh, the danger. Not to be there when Aunt Sadie reaches into her black purse, that mystery squatting at her feet like a patient filing cabinet, big and bottomless as the trapdoor to forever. See how she hauls it into her lap, unzips, rummages, then pulls out the little red box, slips off its rubber band to snap around her wrist, winks, and shakes out the cards. Look at any deck of cards. See how the Joker prances about, masquerading as a jester to jolly the royals. Silver bells on his cap, pointy shoes. The Joker's grandfather, no unforgiving Puritan like mine, but Tarot's fool, too busy, so busy poetizing flowers he'd follow his own battle off a cliff. Measure the fall. Fool to faker to jester, jester to joker. Free to say anything and excused in advance. Lord of anarchy, rider in residence, boss of all fall down. History engraves in spirals, the needle buzzing like a doorbell, a summons one needn't answer. The Joker will take care of it from the peephole of his privacy. Here's a story On the perennial marble top of the pedestal table, Madame Irene lines up the cards. It is Paris before the war, Madame's grand salon, the white hexagonal room with 6 Aubusson tapestries illustrating La Fontaine's fables fill the 6 panels of the walls. Ladies put down their cups, press to her side, or kneel on the water silk voices to watch. Navigating the room, the light from 30 scented candles settled on our heroine. And all chat stops. What can the cards tell of the future of this house and the madame whose worth will founder in scandal? The master has retired to his collection of porcelains, the only love he has left to love. The joker will not show his face tonight. He doesn't have to. His best work is done in the dark. And Sadie lays out the cards on Mama's kitchen table. The usual 10-card spread. Her $6 watch flashes in the light of the overhead bulb. Her eyes flick over the cards. She is reading her fortune. And Sadie doesn't know from marble tops and gilt-legged chairs, nor has she ever heard of La Fontaine, but she knows fable. She knows slow and steady wins the race. And when to gather up the cards and shuffle and lay them out again. For like the princess and the pea, she's made uncomfortable by tests of purity. The Queen of Spades, even at 6, I know the old maid card when I see it. She tucks back into the deck. She's looking for someone else. And when he shows up, as he always does, she kisses the air, gathers up the cards, buttons her make-do sweater, clicks shut her purse, and is gone. The joker appreciates odd visitations. The race car driver, invited to dinner, the one Madame will run off with, the children abandoned or taken from her, grandchildren she'll never see who'll die in the camps. The joker is intrigued with consequences. What happens when someone just drops in? Lately he has taken to drop in on me. Could be I remind him of someone. Skin loosening on the bone, hair gone wild. He's begun whispering to me at night. Past accomplishments, his best of the best. I tell him he's just gathering material for a sort of new and selected, and I want no part of it. After Sadie died, a cedar chest was discovered in her rented room. A hope chest filled with hand-embroidered pillow slips, sachets, nightgowns, lacy lady things, still waiting as they had for 70 years, ever since she'd been sent out, too ugly for marriage, even to the sauerkraut and pickles man on the corner of Orchard and Delancey. Yes, sent out to scrounge up a living, selling insurance, climbing tenement stairs, knocking on doors for 50 cents. But always she believed he would come, dazzling in his full regalia, the Jack of all hearts, the Jack who would turn around at last to take her as she was, holding out the leaf he held in his hand, as if he had just picked it up that day in Central Park, the first leaf of autumn, when the world pours down sad and most beautiful. Well, since we're talking about my family, I have to tell you about this one. I had an aunt. Oh, she's gone now. Sit down, Dick. I had an aunt who had a most amazing walk. And if I can imitate it for you, if I can. This is called Aunt Nellie's Walk. An oscillating fan. That's how my Nellie walked. A metronome on tiny feet, hips sashaying side to side, swinging in importance. Now she sleeps in a chair, unable to recall how she once marched behind the fire truck in the parade and danced the two-step with flowers in her hair. Her mind a blowout in a bowl. But given a nurse with biceps and a bully streak to hoist her up, glue her to a walker and command, walk, you'd see it, even if her feet couldn't move. And she were reduced to reflex under the cotton gown tied in back, there, beneath the flesh, trembling to be off the bone at last, that built-in hint of impudent wag. Oh Lord, give us back this day a little butter for our bread. What shame to have such flaunt gone from this world. The tap-tap of summer sandals, the swinging counterpoint of her arms, the lilting seesaw of her hips. I swear that woman's to and fro could hypnotize a watch. My Aunt Nellie, soul of propriety, queen of good causes, trailing in her wake such endearing treason. Well, you wouldn't know that it was me up here, somebody who know me without a couple of love poems. Yeah. You know, when you get to be as old as I am, you have a history. Got it? And I've got a long history. You know, I've been around the block a couple of times. Anyway, I thought I'd tell you about this one. It's called The Real Thing. You can always tell the Greek from the Roman copy. The same way the lover knows the lover in a crowded room, and how not to get in the way or fill the space between with finger food or chat. To just let it come, head on and straight, the real thing. I was 19, New York, and he wasn't even Greek, but second generation Polish with a wife on vacation. How tacky can you get? But if he wasn't the real thing, he was as close as I ever got. Love seal and stamp, my first journal entry, my preview of coming attractions, my press your head to the X on the wall desire. I still see him, walking away down 8th Street in the day's last lingering light. Golden he was, even the sun was stuck on him. All these years, persistent as a jailhouse dream, he's been with me. My favorite CD played on long car trips, or in the tube of an MRI when the only itch you're allowed to scratch is a bite of memory. And when I finally decided to push delete, for after all, enough is enough, I couldn't. So burned in he was, his left wrist bone, his arms, sun-kissed treasury of fine gold hairs. You know, the internet is a wonderful thing, I suppose. I found out, I was 19, he was 27, and I found out that he died. Now, and it almost destroyed me. I couldn't get rid of it. How could he die when he's still 27? And in my head. And it took me a long time to get over it. And I never admitted that to my sweet young friend. Okay, I have a friend, a good friend, who had a love affair. And his wife found out about it. His wife found out about it. And so that destroyed that. And he was miserable. And she was miserable. And their one child was miserable. And the beloved somewhere was miserable. And he had decided that he was going to give it all up and reform. So I wrote this. If it sounds familiar, it was on Poetry Daily anyway. Don't get moral on me. You know, when I taught here years ago, this was a very uptight place. I don't know if it still is, but don't worry. And sometimes I worry about the young people, you know, love, passion, desire. Does that still exist? Anyway, okay. It's called Behind the Door. Letter left in a pocket, strange earring in a glove compartment. Such simple things, and the world implodes. Wife rattling around the house that used to be home. Child staring at her plate, picking through her peas. The lover lost, without love's current, that had like a river carried him so long. The sweet rush he'd lived in, tent in the woods, motels in how many towns. And of course, the unnamed, the dear someone, somewhere, sitting by the phone, daring it to ring. Do not think I am a stranger to this story. The promises, the required apologies, the ritual bearing of the jugular. Oh friend, be warned. The heart may not stay in storage long, riding an iron track, obedient as a shooting gallery duck. A heart wants to be used, fed, nourished on nuzzle and whim, practicing the skills it's learned of whisper and cunning. It needs to believe that on any ordinary night, before the pitiful throbbing stops and the body, that new amazing toy, is laid out and displayed like a plastic floral arrangement, a rocket will slip in low under the radar, roaring and flashing lights, the star's own emissary. And why? But to test the line of do not cross, the line of unprofitable. For the heart is not mollified by notions of safety or apt to thrive on a diet of crackers and milk. It wants what it wants. What's behind the door? Knowing full well the key swings on a rope hanging from one's own neck. That's the place, isn't it? Such sweet skin, there in the next hollow, where she'd lay her mouth, cupping the pulse, as if to drink and hold inside her all that ecstasy, that mad hammering before it dies away. So, so I say, well, okay, then what is this all about? If we're nothing, if we're just a speck of dust, or else we're just, molecules and enzymes and all of that, and we're so miserable half the time. I don't know about you, but I am. What is it about? And what's to save us? So the book ends on a poem. I don't know if anyone likes it, but I like it, so I'm going to read it. Of crockery and mythic tales. What's seen from the corner of the eye teases our notions of reality. The way the sliver from what's left of the fess up now. Any of you still have those dreams, those embarrassing dreams? Did you see them?
You looking for hands?
Those embarrassing dreams where the next day you look at that person and you're embarrassed? Bonnie, you look confused. You're getting old if you don't know what I'm talking about.
I wasn't sure which dream.
You know those dreams. Those. It's like, what's real? Of crockery and mythic tales. What's seen from the corner of the eye teases our notions of reality. The way the sliver from what's left of last night's dream proves fondle enough to shatter a plate the next morning while washing the dishes. If real contains other than what's to stub your toe, trees outside the window, the broken shards at your feet, then add the wounds of childhood, never to be scabbed over and safely stowed under a scar. And don't forget the jolt that lives in shadows playing off a wall, or the sudden flash of light bounced off a polished table. What difference if what flickers from the periphery is actual or the mind's projection? Maybe that buzz in the brain is creation's running narrative, the holy book of empty space. Nights when the ceiling locks down and the palm at the end of your wrist repeats and repeats its lines, it's the mind that spins out deliverance. A bedtime story, a horse with wings. In other words, it's the imagination that makes sense. Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't. And I would like to read a poem that is not, to end with a poem that's not in the book, because I like it. It's called Rumba. Do you all know what the rumba was? It's a dance. Raise your hand if you used to do the rumba. See, you don't It's very slow and very sensual and very delicious. When I was in high school, we used to have dances every Friday night at the Y with a live band. That's how long ago. And don't you love it when poets get up here and say, everything in this poem really actually happened? Well, it did. It really, really did. I know you're not supposed to say that. Rumba. No one does the rumba the way those two used to do it. Eyes half closed, the rolling hips speaking all language necessary. And we, who knew nothing beyond plucking daisies and pining, stood spellbound, for there was that dress she wore, tight with a sheen, plum red, and he all slicked back auburn. Friday night at the Y with a live band, and it's Romeo, we'd whisper to each other whenever he'd walk her onto the floor, making the gym spark like holy ground. And we, backing up to form a circle around them respectfully. And why not? For weren't we true believers, or would be in a few years? Believers not in them, but in the language beneath the music. Bodies are born to speak. The language that hit me like a brick 3 years later at my desk, where I hid in the back row of Italian 102, when the professor, leaning over his lectern, began reciting Italian poetry. Maybe Cesare Pavese or Eugenio Montale, who knows? For I rarely did homework, or as little as possible. And maybe I was supposed to be translating as he spoke the lines, but how could I, watching him bend to the need in us, his eyes half closed, an invitation not to be refused. And I, who didn't understand a word, found I could suddenly read, not the Italian, which was music, but underneath it, to where he led with his mellifluous voice, that to me was the silk wrapping around the real words that wound around the small of my back like an irresistible arm leading me onto the floor. And I tell you, I who scrimped on homework and ended up with a D, learned then how to move past the ABC of the box step in order to follow him and those words all my life. Thank you. Am I supposed to do something now? What?
Stand here.
You can't? Oh, you can't hear?
There you go.
Am I supposed to do something now?
Question.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, Gracie.
I've devoured your Ask Alice podcast
Yeah.
since I saw the wonderful poster, and I thank the people who did that. And I wonder, I haven't gotten far enough to know if you ever answer My Sweet Hell. So are you going to tell why you introduce it that way? You want to say more
Because
about that?
poetry is my sweet.
Oh, that's enough said.
Well, it is. It's,
Well, I want everybody to know you're on a podcast
right.
anyway.
Well, I begin by saying,
Oh.
welcome to, Ask Alice about poetry, my sweet hell. It is. It's hellish because the words keep slipping around. It's banging your head against the wall, and yet I couldn't live without it. And it's a sweet hell. I don't know how else.
And you also said it starts whimpering when you don't pay attention.
That's right. When I don't write for a while, I almost hear it whimpering.
Well, thank you for the podcast.
You're not paying attention to me. Any other questions? You can ask me anything. I'll read it.
Can you tell us read other poems, or
Well, you
you
don't
have
have-
what you have?
No, I've got a zillion.
You have
of them,
snow?
but-
Yep. It's called
I don't know what
Snow.
it means.
It's beautiful.
That's it?
Is the last one in a book? Rumba?
No, not yet.
Okay, not yet.
It's relative. Yeah.
Alice, what's been the best part about aging?
You can tell he's in the religion department. The best part about aging, nothing much. It's a bummer. What can I tell you? My feet are bothering me, my back is bothering me. That's the part about aging. Well, I can't say honestly that it's made me so that I sort of like say anything, because those of you who know me. Best part about aging, I don't know if I can answer that. The best part about aging is having my sweet young thing. Those of you who know Bruce, he is my champion. And what I said in that poem, the only one who ever loved me is probably true. I don't know, we're about, I'm 20 years older than he is, and we're about emotionally both 4 years old. Well, it's true, yeah, so that's been good. I never thought that I could ever find anybody. I mean, I found so many of them, but, yeah. I didn't answer your question, I know.
It was fun being
The best part about me living in Georgia, now there's a question for you, is we have a house in the middle of a forest, and I never liked the spring. I don't like the spring, all those daffodils. That's just so silly. I've always liked the fall. The fall appeals to me. It's sad and it's beautiful and it's dying. I like it. It fits me. But what, honey?
Your birthday season.
Yeah, it's my birthday, and all my kids are born in the fall. But to live in the middle of a forest and watch that forest come alive is an amazing thing to watch. It's got nothing to do with daffodils. Just watching that thing happen. It's amazing. Charlotte?
Do you write about that?
Yes.
I love the nature poetry.
Yes.
The
Yes.
spring comes alive.
Yes, I do. And I know you do, because you walk the trails. Yeah. Oh, God, yeah, I do.
Alice, what's your best memory of the university while you were teaching?
The best what?
The best memory that you have from when you were teaching?
How's about the worst? The best memory are some of the students I had that are sitting right there. That are sitting right there, that I remember. And to know that they are still on their feet, and they've made a life, whatever it was, that is. And there are some wonderful, funny things that used to happen in this place. Sorry. That Charlotte and I were discussing over dinner. Some really funny stories with Joe. I don't know if they still occur. Yeah.
From the tongue, having only 2 weeks to live, there's scarce room for insult.
Right.
Okay, are you talking near the end of your life?
No. I'm talking about that if you look at the epigraph, it says that your taste buds only live for 2 weeks. So if they only live for 2 weeks, you don't want to insult them with lousy food. Okay? Right? Got it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Big old side of cheesecake.
What caused you to?
Cheryl, hi.
Hi. What made you decide to move to Georgia?
My husband, my sweet young thing, got an offer of a position to be the expert on his expertise, which is Flannery O'Connor. And there's a funny story about that. We found out about that. We were at a conference in Denmark, a Flannery O'Connor conference in Denmark, which is very strange right away. And the person who had the job before came over to him and said that she was retiring and wanted him to apply for the job. So the next day on the train, going from where was Deborah? Going from where we were out in the boondocks to Copenhagen to get my sweet young thing was very solicitous, because you know what they say about older people. You have to be very careful, because a move can be traumatic. And I said, you give me 3 days to pack up this house and we're out of here. That's what we did. It's been a big adventure down there, it's really has. Yes?
In what environment do you like to write, or do you write best?
Alone. I'm a loner. I'm a loner. And I've always been a loner. And so I feel at home as long as I'm alone. I grew up in New York City, okay? And every summer, starting when I was 5 years old, we would go out to Long Beach, which in those days was an empty child's paradise. It was empty. And in those days, parents didn't hover as much, okay? And then my parents came from the country, which was then the country. So I feel as much at home or as much not at home in a big city, on the beach, or up in the mountains. Okay? But I can write anywhere, just shut the door. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Do you have any certain habits? Like
Yes. I do now.
wine or
Well, I've got all sorts of habits. You don't want to hear about my habits. That was a joke. We live in a beautiful house, and the whole upstairs is one big, like an airy, and it's surrounded by windows. So there was a reference in there to watching the hawks, and I watched, it's in the middle of a forest, but the house is built on a hill, so that I see the tops of the trees and the sky, and I can watch the hawks from the window circling. So I'm up there at least 8 hours a day, you know, working. I told the class that I was in the other day, yesterday I guess it was, it takes me sometimes at least a month to write one poem, because it has to sound as if it just came out like that. And oftentimes I have no idea what I'm talking about. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I live my life in complete confusion. I do. Writing poetry is a way to figure out what you think. I don't know what I think. If you say you do, I think you're lying. I don't know how I feel. I mean, I know how I think I feel, but not really. And the poem is a way of sort of taking a rope down into a lake and figuring out what's down there. So writing it is a sweet hell, and it's also very exciting. I can't think of anything more exciting or anything more pleasurable, and I've done a lot of things in my life, believe me. But I can't think of anything more pleasurable when suddenly the words fall in. And there I am sitting there alone and saying, oh! Of course, the next day I might look at it again and say, well. But yes, it's exciting. It's exciting. It's like exploration. Yeah.
So does the title for your poem come before you write it or after you've written?
Yes. Sometimes this way, sometimes that way, sometimes in the middle. Okay? I mean, I don't know. Sometimes titles are very difficult, sometimes they're easy. You know, I don't know. That's the best I can do.
Just like an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a question, and if there's someone else who wants to say something, they should, but I love what you said about about the whimpering starts. And then the deepest part of you is what you don't know. What you don't know is where the poetry comes from. And
Yeah, where are you reading?
My notes from
Oh.
podcast. Your life is the deep well from which the poetry comes.
Right.
I just think
I think that's true.
I love that.
Right. I think that's
Hope
true.
that's true.
Right. I think it comes from the deepest part of you, the part of you that you don't know what's in there. I think you do, but you don't. Yeah. And as I told the class that I was in yesterday, you don't let anybody insult that. You do not allow anybody to say dumb things like, oh yeah, sure, I used to write poetry too when I was your age. Because what they're doing is walking on you. Your poetry, what you create is from the deepest part of you that there is. It's you. And you just don't allow it. Yes, Rick?
I got a very serious question. You said it was an adventure going to Georgia. Is Bruce still using his chainsaw?
He doesn't own one. He doesn't own a chainsaw.
Well, you said when you first moved down there, I got a wonderful message that you had to go out and chainsaw something.
No, well, that he was kidding. Bruce used a chainsaw, are you kidding? I'm lucky that he uses the vacuum cleaner. Although we could use somebody to come and do some chainsawing. Anything else? Yeah.
Do you have an agent?
No. When you write poetry, nobody's interested in being your agent. Yeah.
You talked about your
Joe, that's you. isn't
Yes,
it?
that's me.
How could you lose all that hair?
My students don't believe that I used to have a lot of hair.
Yeah, they do. And you have these long, long legs, and they used to stick out from the desk.
Two people noticed that. This is Sally.
Oh my God.
We met in her class. You talked about your process now, but in the introduction, it mentioned that you started really writing seriously in your 40s. How did you sort of first get over that first writing barrier, and how's your process changed since you started?
I started writing poems when I was married to my first husband, and I used to hide them in the drawer. I would do that. What? Can you hear me?
No.
No. Can you hear me now? Yeah? No? Yeah?
You just got kind of quiet,
I got quiet.
which we're not used to from you.
I know, but I do get quiet. I'm a very quiet person, you wouldn't believe. I began writing poems because I was miserable in my first marriage. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I just loved doing it because poetry was always part of my life. My mother wanted me to be Shirley Temple. I don't know if you know who that is anymore. If you don't lie, don't. So she used to enter me in oratory contests, and I never lost. So poetry was always part of, of my life. It was never the other. It was never the strange other thing. And when I was a kid in school during the Depression, you've heard of that one, the Big Depression, not this one, that one. We used to have to memorize poetry. So there was that. And so after I got married and I was miserable, I began writing poetry and hiding it. And that went on. I would write maybe one or two a year when I got the urge. And I would hide it in the drawer. And then once in a while I would take it out and say, well, that's not so bad. And write another one. And that went on for 13, 14 years. And then to make a long story short, I got a divorce and took it out of the drawer. And that's funny, but it's not funny. It was very painful and long and terrible, but I didn't know then. What I know now is that the poetry is who you are. And I took me out of the drawer. And I began going to the Hummingbird Cafe, which by the way doesn't exist anymore, which was in downtown on Talbot Street. And I went there, and actually a student took me. His name was Randy Castor. Any of you remember him?
Yeah, he's raising Christmas trees.
He's what?
Raising Christmas trees.
Oh.
Each side.
He's writing poetry.
And he was 18 years old, and it was in February of 19, I used to remember the date. And he said to me, they're reading poetry down in the Hummingbird Cafe, you ought to go. And I said, oh no, I can't do that. This is somebody who wanted to travel the world. And I did later alone. But then I couldn't cross the street. And I said, will you take me? And he took me. And there were 8 people there, 4 of them dead, blotto, drunk. And the other 4, some of you might remember, Ron Ray, Jeb Carter, who is now, thinks he's Pooh-Bah. And a couple of others, and they said, you know, you ought to come back. And that began my second life, and I began going there every Tuesday night. And people would say to me, oh, you're not bad. You got something new. And I took the poems out of the drawer and began writing. Okay, and so I don't know, I forgot what the question was. But and the more you write, the more you have to write. The more you have to, because it becomes how you think, how you feel, how you figure out. And so that was the beginning. And now I don't know how I could breathe in and out without it. You know, poetry has given me a life. Gloria Steinem has given me a life. Yeah. Did I answer the question? Good. Elizabeth?
No, actually, Bill here has a question.
Okay.
You mentioned your mother. I met your mother on one occasion, and I asked her where she thought she had gone wrong. She went on and on. I couldn't believe it. You said you like to be alone. I don't know if you want to remind her that, or be reminded that you and I have a picture on your 50th birthday party together,
Right.
in your shower.
In your shower.
Remember that?
I remember the 50th birthday party, and I remember
We were fully clothed. Now, Alice and her friend, we're so happy that you're here.
Thank
You
you.
said on your blog that when your new book arrived in the mail, Bruce jumped up and down and ran around the house. When Rosie, my wife, is down here somewhere, found out that you were coming tonight, she did the same thing.
Did you? Thank you.
But I wasn't brave enough to ever take your class. I was too scared.
Well, they lived through it over the years.
I know. I'm with the survivors.
Okay.
I know you were smart.
Yeah.
I was way over it.
What do you think about rhyming verse?
I think it's terrific.
What?
Do you? I think it's terrific. I've written stuff that rhymes. All poetry rhymes. What you're thinking of is end stop rhyme, which is da 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 doom da 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 spoon da 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 which is lulling. And poetry, like all arts, is not lulling. It's enough to peel your eyeballs back and shoot you. So, but all poetry rhymes, and there's many different kinds of rhyme. It's the interior sounds, alliteration, assonance, and all that business going on in there, which the rhythm is carrying. Okay? I think rhyming is fine. Yeah?
Could you still write if you weren't alone?
Would I still write it? What?
If you weren't alone? Say for an environment where you're alone to write, could you still write if you were among people?
Would I still write if I were among people? I would say, excuse me. I have to go there now. I think that one makes their life. One creates it the way one wants it, even though you don't know what you want. I have always created a life where I am, for the most part, alone. All right? And there have been always people around me. Herb Castle was one of them. Who kept track of things. So I didn't have to. You know, and he would say things like, remember we have a meeting on Thursday. Oh, really? Okay. So, there are those people in one, there are people like that in your life. Some of you might be one of them. Schedules are very important, and they are. So there's always people like that around me that I can say, what time are we supposed to be leaving? You know, this kind of. Okay? Now you know more than you've
Okay.